lockdown, how did that impact you and impact the record, or did it just serve as a, did it derail things? I don't know. How was it for you?
Upside down. Um, yeah, it's strange. Again, with hindsight, I feel I could have utilised lockdown. I could have finished everything, really. You know, it was like 18 months pretty much, um, over a 2 year period where very little went on. You know, we couldn't do anything. You know, a lot of the time you couldn't see anyone, you couldn't leave your home. Um, I was in a very privileged position where I've got enough room at home for me to think like, well, I'm not crowded on top of other people, and and we live in a reasonably remote area, so it wasn't too fussed about walking out the gate. I didn't think I was going to be immediately arrested. I wasn't doing a Boris Johnson, but and in fact, after a while, because I was in a privileged position, I actually relished certain aspects of lockdown. I loved the fact there were no planes in the sky. It was fucking great, and the birds were singing a lot more. I mean, everything was sort of reverting back again into this, like, it felt like an old world. You know, it's like I've never had a smartphone, and there's only one thing in the house that connects to the internet. And if the lid's shut, the house is like, we're disconnected. We're not off the grid, but I was oblivious to it, like, so much, and I actually really loved it. I said to you earlier, like, there's a part of me that really actually enjoys solitude. It's a strange occupation for someone who enjoys solitude, because a lot of it is actually, so I liked the idea of not having to do it. I didn't get dressed very often. Some weeks I was just wandering around. I did a few things. I think in the first lockdown, which ended up being called barefoot sessions. I did some stuff from home of just playing some old songs, and I didn't even realise that I wasn't dressed. I mean, it was actually quite a shock, in a funny way. I felt like, because it went out online, and people said, he's not wearing any shoes or socks. And I thought, am I not? And that was like that was the thing. Oh, he's got feet. So yeah, it changed me. I almost took a step outside of myself as well, thinking about it, because I did a lot of things that were nothing to do with what I do. As my I don't really have a normal life, I suppose. But I kind of stepped out of me through lockdown, and I did stuff. I read all of John le Carré's books, the whole oeuvre, in one go. Stuff like that. I thought, I never thought I'd have time to do any of these things. I read War and Peace. Like, I never honestly thought I would. Everyone says they're going to read War and Peace. I read it. It's like,
What's it like? Is it any good?
I think it's one of those books. I realised that big famous books like that, you've invested so much time and effort into getting to the end that you have to say it's good. I mean, honestly, it's well written. Is me going to critique War and Peace? This is going to be great. I didn't enjoy it that much, actually, to be honest. I didn't, because I wasn't really very sympathetic to any of the characters in it. I didn't really see the point. It's very of its time. It's very mannered. It's like a lot of historical literature where you just think, oh, for fuck's sake, just say something, like, because it's all to do with, like, social mores, and it's very hard to sort of take them seriously. Like with a lot of that kind of literature, you just think, you just speak up, man. It's like. And then I embarked on reading, on the back of this stuff. I was reading a lot of books that meant a lot to me when I was younger, to see if they had the same resonance. So I read an awful, probably, 100+ books in the first year of lockdown. That's all I did. I listened to vast amounts of music. I just had, I thought, right, and it was almost like an extended holiday. The dark side of it, meanwhile, like, all my remaining aunts and uncles died. In care homes, and my cousins. I mean, everyone that I knew was kind of dealing with this sort of awful reality of, like, not being able to. My mum and dad had already died, and so I didn't have to go through that. I think I would have had a completely different experience if I had seen them in the situations that many of the people that I know were not able to go and engage with their own families. I mean, it was really awful. After the event, you know, when I sort of talked to people, it dawned on me the reality of lockdown for most people wasn't a good thing. You know, I mean, I didn't think it was a good thing because people would die. I was aware of it, but I mean, just on a personal level, for me, it was just about quiet and solitude. You know, it was a very, very selfish lockdown, if you like. It was like, which is sort of the spirit of lockdown in a way. I was relieved it came to an end. Fucking hell, I did grow tired of it, I must admit. Doing the thing that I did with the churches in particular. And we did the thing with Gorillaz, and it was like the first time I'd been out, you know, like for months. And it was really weird how desocialised everyone was. It's like the mask covered up this fact that, like, behind the mask you're kind of gurning because you weren't quite sure how to compose your face in front of other people. So it was very, very odd. It took quite a while actually to get back into some semblance of normality. All this sort of like even now people stand slightly further apart than they used to, and there's this like very slight hesitation in shaking people's hands and stuff. There's all minimal things, but it was an enormous thing looking back, and as you were saying earlier, it seems to have almost like it's a mass forgetting of what it really was. And I always think of it in my own mind when I'm trying to piece together from 2019 through to now. It's all sort of, it's kind of quite blurry, smeared sort of memories of like what happened then. The only defining thing for me is actually I got shingles in my face at one point, and I got it because the bloke who treated me said, it's chicken pox basically, and I had it as a kid, and the virus stays in you, and it's most of the times it's triggered by stress. And he said, "Are you stressed?" I thought, I'm actually not. I feel more relaxed than I've felt in my 20 odd years. And he said, "Oh, have you been out in the sun a lot?" I said, "Yeah, I have been out in the sun much more than I normally would." And he said, "It's that sunlight can trigger shingles." And I thought, oh. So yeah, I had all this, like my entire face looked like Elephant Man for a brief period of like pustulating sores and things. So that was I can remember that. That there's a before shingles and after for me, so it's because it fucking hurt as well.
So the album Songs of Lost World, I mean, it deals with some dark themes, and you've talked about experiencing loss during the creation of the records. I mean, how was it going through those experiences, then putting that down, capturing that?
Yeah, it's one of the things. I mean, our songs have always had that element of you know, a fear of mortality, I suppose, for want of a better way of putting it. It's always been there ever since I was young. I mean, I've kind of wrestled with it since I was pretty, like 8 years old, I think. But as you get older, it becomes more real, and all of us, you know, the circle of people, the band, and most of the people that I kind of like know socially, we're all growing older at the same rate, give or take, and death and dying becomes more every day, unfortunately, and it's something you. So when you're younger, you romanticise it even without knowing it. You romanticise it all, and and then it starts happening to people like, you know, your immediate family and friends, and suddenly it's a different thing, and it was that really, and it's something that I struggled with. Lyrically, was to how to put this into the songs, because I feel like I am a different person than I was when we last made an album. You know, I wanted that to come through. I think I'm and I struggled a lot with the right tone of like I Can Never Say Goodbye was about my brother dying, and it was trying to achieve the right balance between like the outpouring that I had after the event, and just trying to take the right part of that and put it into a song. You know, some of the versions of that I did were so overwrought. You know, I thought they were great, and then I'd play them to someone, they're like, you know, you can't. It's too much. You can't do that. It's like, and I realised I couldn't. Doing that song live, sometimes it would actually, there was the ones it would really kind of break me up, and it was very difficult to not go over the top. But yeah, I mean that was been true for me trying to write the words to all of the new songs. Is just trying to have the right sort of tone and trying to reflect the fact. I mean, I don't feel my age at all, but I'm aware of you know, I turned 65 this year. It's like, for fuck's sake, I'm 65. It's like, I want to be aware of that. I want to reflect that in the songs. I want to reflect the fact that I am where I am, and that the things that matter to me now aren't the things that mattered to me like 20 years ago. And it's, yeah, and so in some way it constrains me. It has constrained, but I think in a good way. I think it stopped me from straying too far from, you know. I want the songs to mean something, I suppose is what I'm saying. Whereas in the past I wasn't really that bothered. There have been big periods of the Cure's history where some of the songs mattered and some of them didn't. On this album they all matter, you know. So it's because I realise I haven't got that many more albums, although I've got another 2 coming up. It's not that many more.
How did it change you doing this record? Because like, we're not the same person going into a record as we are coming out of a record, or any kind of artistic endeavour. It's by dint of doing it, it changes you. How did this record change you?
It does, but it's very, because of the way that it's been done, it's kind of incremental, and so I think that it's more. I was ready to make the record before we made it. Whereas often, I know what you mean, often in the past there's something, and particularly if you make an album, then you go and tour it, at the end of that period, that's how I define my adult life, is by albums and tours, you know. I mean, in some ways it's great because I can actually place things, you know. There's lots of photographs and stuff, and I can place where I was, what I was doing, who I was, you know, by songs. It's strange. Even when I'm on stage and I'm singing songs live, it takes me back, you know, for that 3 or 4 minutes. I can go back to where I was when I did the song. It's an odd sensation. I think with this album, I was kind of ready. I felt like I'd already made it in a funny way. It just came out of me because I was already there, you know. So. The change that happened to me, I think, between the last album, it was the 10 years that we'd spent as a band kind of like playing. That's the period that I changed through. I think we got to 2019. I think I pinned so much on 2018 as an anniversary year. But I think once it was gone, it was that changed me. I was sort of like, it's all behind me. And I thought every moment from this point on is pretty much a bonus, you know. Because I thought that the Hyde Park show would be it. I thought that was the end of the Cure. I went into it thinking that's, you know, I didn't plan it, but I had a sneaky feeling that this was going to be it. And it was only because it was such a great day and such a great response, and I enjoyed it so much. And like, we suddenly got a flood of offers to headline every European festival, you know, every major festival. Glastonbury came and said, "Did you want to play Glastonbury?" Like, you know, I thought, well, maybe it's not the right time to stop. But I wasn't stopping because I was sort of like thought, I don't want to do it anymore. I just thought it'd be a nice time to stop, and it allows me a few years when I'm still kind of like, you know, able to do something else. I can go and do something else, and really, I wasn't that bothered. Funny enough, I thought that's it. I've kind of, because I'd arranged everything to end in 2018. So when we got to 2019, I sort of felt really relieved. It's like we did it. So I've had a very different outlook to everything actually since 2019. I see the world in, you know, and because everyone that died, pretty much everyone that died that meant something to me died prior to 2019. I felt like this, you know, I've got to make the most of this. It's like, you know,
so it's kind of like the freedom of splitting up, but then not actually having to split up.
Yeah, in a strange way. I mean, 2019 was the culmination of all that. We had a fantastic year playing festivals, and then because then I started to work on the songs. And since then, it's like another.
The big thing to change it.